Wow. You guys, I honestly was sitting here holding back tears because I'm looking at all your artwork coming on the screen, and then I'm reading all the comments from everybody. And do you know that it's a real honor that you're here? It's a real honor that so many of you participate in these master classes, and it's just a joy. And I know I'm not just speaking for myself. I know that all of us on this side feel the same way. So thank you for being here. Today is going to be a special day. We are going to be able to learn from the wonderful, amazing Diana Shine. Diana, can you come on screen here?
You surprised me. Oh, thank you.
Oh, did you not know that you were teaching today?
No. No, I knew. I just didn't know you were going to pop me onto the screen right then.
Yes. So,
Oh.
Diana, isn't it cool to see everybody's artwork like that, though?
Oh, I was so impressed. And look at all the different interpretations. And, art just isn't a one size fits all or a one rule, one rule to rule them all. It's just how each individual interprets the information and then pushes it out there through their own creativity. I love that so much. And I too was just brushing back tears to see how many people just gave it their all. It was wonderful.
Yeah, it is so awesome, you guys. You guys are doing amazing. And so, Diana, what do they have to look forward to? Give us just a quick summary of what today's going to be, because I'm going to jump into some slides and do a quick review of the first day, but give us a little summary of today.
Well, color is a big conundrum for some people. They just don't, like, often new artists will say, I just don't see color the way you do. How do you see all those colors? And really, color comes down to like 4 color basics. And one of those 4 color basics is sort of the most important one to create an image that is believable, can be realistic if you want it to be realistic, and can be interpreted in many different, either vivid colors or muted colors. It's all up to the artist, but there's just 4 basics to learn. And learning 4 things isn't hard to do. So hopefully you'll just join along with me. If you've heard the material before, just consider it review. But I know you're going to have some fun painting along with me because I had such great fun with these colors today.
That's exciting. So yeah. I know that everybody's going to be thrilled to be able to learn from you again, because I love watching the comments on days like today. So guys, we're going to jump into that pretty quickly here, but I need to go through some slides here just in preparation to get us to Diana. So let's take just a minute to look at this. And I'm going to go like this. So we are here in the Radiant Acrylic Masterclass. Today is day 2, session 2, Freedom with Color. And I'll just get this out of the way. Who's excited for listening to and learning from Diana today? I know that we're going to see everybody shouting it out, because if you don't know Diana, you will learn after today what an amazing artist she is and what an incredible instructor. So I see it coming in. Diana's teaching is outstanding. Yes, I'm excited. Anybody who knows is just gung-ho and going to be so thrilled today. So I love it. So I'm going to do a quick review of what we learned on day 1. Day 1 was the bold brush breakthrough. The idea is that if you take intention and you put effort, you can create bold brushwork, because it's a choice. You don't have to be, 20 years in to get this. And I want to give high fives all around. So just to everybody who's around you, because we got people all over the world, all over the United States, Canada, all over. I know people from Germany, people from Australia. I saw somebody who said they woke up at like 3 a.m. to attend last time. So give high fives all around, because like we saw in the pre-roll, there's just incredible, diverse effort coming forth from all you guys. And so it's so fun to go into the Facebook group, look around, and see all the paintings that you've produced. It's beautiful. And here's my next question for you. What is one thing you learned through your homework? What is just one thing? I want to read out some of it because I know this also is going to be different for everybody. But I love the high fives all around. I love it. I love it. Okay, so I'm going to start seeing impressive paintings. Paint big. Don't give up. I can paint with a big brush. Don't be afraid. Boldness equals freedom. Practice, practice, practice. Get out of my head. Don't give up. Let it go. I can paint with one brush. Keep moving. Be bold. Freedom to use the biggest brush and not be detailed. See, these are these cool lessons that if you kind of put yourself in a place where you practice something that might feel a little bit out of your comfort zone, it's going to stretch you and grow you. And I have to ask this too. Did any of you experience any negative emotions when you were painting? Because I know if I'm stretching myself, there's some pain that kind of happens. If that's stretching my muscles, if it's trying to grow in some way, usually there's a little bit of just whatever happens. And if that's true for you, I just want you to know you're not alone. You are not alone, because that is part of what I see. No fear, enjoy and have fun. But I saw somebody say, stress. I felt disappointed. See, and there's other people are saying I didn't at all. I felt super good. Some people felt frustrated. Some people were self-critical, and others weren't. But the thing is, it's normal to feel certain things. And I love this quote. You'll hear me say this all the time, but there are 6 stages of the creative process. The first one is, this is awesome. The second stage is, this is tricky. The third stage is, this is terrible. The fourth, I am terrible. We internalize it sometimes. The fifth is, this might be okay. And the sixth stage, if we keep moving forward, comes back to, this is awesome. So the thing is, we want to avoid stage 4 because that's when we internalize it. Like, our painting isn't going good, so therefore I'm not a good person. That's just not true. And I want to say again, I am so dang proud of you. We are all on our own journey. It has ups and downs, but thank you for encouraging each other, because we can do this together. You know, it takes encouragement to keep going sometimes when you feel discouraged or disappointed or frustrated. So thank you for being here. And I thank everybody for encouraging each other, because we need each other and we can do this together. So if you came today and you felt discouraged in the last day when you're painting, thank you for showing up again, because you will get through it. You will keep moving forward, and we can do this together. If you have any questions through any of this, just make sure you email us at support@acrylicuniversity.com. We have a full schedule. We have something tomorrow, VIP session with me, and then Friday we have the final session for the Mastering Light. And again, if you have anything that you're looking for, please go to acrylicuniversity.com/radiant, because that is where we have everything. Reference photos for today. If you need any of your basic questions, they're going to be answered right there. There's a whole bunch of pages that you can go through to find your resources. Today is freedom with color. So I have another question for you. What holds you back from being free in your color choices? If you're thinking about your artwork and you maybe have seen paintings that you aspire to, but there's something that's holding you back, what would you say it is? What is the obstacle that's keeping you? Habit, I see fear, knowledge, being too literal, reality, mixing enough color, inexperience, being colorblind. That's a real one. Lack of imagination, too much concern with realism, and fear, lack of knowledge. So what you're going to get today, it's going to be so great, is that if you can understand values, it really does unlock freedom for you. We're getting there, guys. I know that some people get really impatient, but this is important for us. But if you're ready, shout it out now, and we're going to get rolling. We're going to get rolling. Yes, I am ready. I was born ready. And I want you to remember this, you guys, that you do not need to paint along with Diana as she's doing this. What she's going to do is it's a little bit complex. She's going to do several different things. So it's probably helpful if you just watch along and come back later to do your painting. If you want to try, go for it. But that's just a word of advice. If you feel like you might fall behind and miss something, you always can go back and rewind it. So it's time. Let's learn from Diana, you guys. This is going to be one heck of a lesson.
Hi, I'm Diana Shine, and today I want to show you some tips, tools, techniques, things you can do with your palette right now today that will give you better freedom with color. Kandinsky says that color can provide a psychic vibration. Color hides a power still unknown but real, which acts on every part of the human body. And we know this to be true when we enter a garden or a grove or a gallery. Color excites us, thrills us, calms us, creates vibrations inside of us that nothing else can do. And so what happens when we go see some masterworks in a museum or a gallery is this happens to me all the time. I look at it and say, I love the color they found, but I just don't see this color with my eyes and my life. I don't experience these colors. How did these artists find this? Well, I'm going to give you a little clue as to how they do it with just some simple techniques. But first of all, we're going to need to start with 4 color basics. Now, many of you are experienced artists and you already know this, but I'm going to put them in order and I'm going to provide you with some tools that'll help you create a greater freedom in your color work. But you do need to understand these 4 color basics. So for you experienced artists, this is review. For those of you who've never learned this, well, hang on. This is something new, and hopefully we'll be able to unpack this and look at how you can create color freedom. Let's look at the very first color basic, which is simply a word, hue. The word hue means basic color. And for this conversation, we're going to talk about the 6 basic colors that begin our color wheel: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet. The 6 basic hues in color mixing. And this word hue is an umbrella word. The word red, for instance, covers a whole range of reds. The word orange too, the word yellow. When we say that word, we create in our minds a concept, but it covers an enormous range of different types of that color. Let's look more closely. This is how I organize my palette in a really simple, limited palette. You can create your 6 basic hues using this limited palette. In acrylic, these are ultramarine blue that I mix with a little bit of phthalo blue-green shade, quinacridone primary red, and cadmium yellow light. To create this color wheel, all I do is mix the colors in between. So to create an orange, I mix the yellow and red. To create green, I mix the yellow and blue right between the yellow and blue in line. And to mix the violet, I mix the red and the blue together in line around this color wheel. These 4 basic pigments create these 6 colors, and I'll show you how you can create every color with just a few simple pigments. I know it's easy to go to the art store and really go crazy buying every single tube of paint. But all you need are the 3 primaries in white to create a better and more easily seen color harmony. But what do you do about all these other colors? What do you do about all the range of colors we can see? Well, let's talk about the second color basic, value. Out of the tube or off the pen, every single color comes in a value. A value means light to dark. Here I've shown a scale from 1 to 9. 1 is white, 9 is black, and then there are increments of different levels of gray in between. And value simply means the lightness or darkness of a color. And we can see that every color has its own particular lightness or darkness. The blues are darker, the yellows are lighter. But let's see what we can do with our paints. Paints can be lightened or darkened to every color. Remember that value range? From white to black. Every color we squeeze out of the tube can be lightened with white or darkened with black. How easy is that? There's not much easier to lighten a color or darken a color than that. Here's our third color basic. Temperature. That means the visual warmth or coolness of a color. Warm colors are colors of the sun and fire and heat, the color of a hot plate you don't want to touch. And cool colors are the colors of snow and ice and cold water. It doesn't reflect the actual physical temperature of a thing. It's just the colors that are represented here. When we look at a rainbow, we see that the colors are separated out. That's what a rainbow does. It extracts the different wavelengths of color and separates them out. Warm colors are created from yellow or red, or contain yellow or red, and cool colors in the rainbow contain blue. When we're talking about paint, white is also considered a cool color. If we stretch these rainbow colors out in a row, and then we turn that row into a color wheel, we can really see that they are divided. Warm colors on the one side contain yellow or red, and cool colors contain blue. But there are nuances in this. Here are some greens. On the photo on the left, upper left, we can see that those greens contain some warms, some yellows. I took both these photos on a hike on the same day. It isn't about the temperature of the day. It was quite a hot day. It's about the temperature of the color. In the upper left, we can see that those greens contain yellow or red, or a combination of yellow and red. They are warm greens. On the right, we can see that the greens contain, as an element of their mixture, white or blue, or a combination of white and blue. So if you want to warm up a color with your paint, you'd have some combination of yellow and red. If you want to cool down a color of paint, you'd add some combination of white and blue. How easy is that? And here's the fourth color basic. We're already to the fourth color basic, and it's this: intensity, otherwise known as chroma. When I first started taking art classes many years ago, 40 years ago now, 40 some years, the teacher would throw out the word chroma, and I would nod, pretend like I knew what they were saying, or I'd read an art book and yep, chroma. It just means the brightness or dullness of a color, the intensity of the color. Bright colors are also known as high intensity, high chroma, highly saturated colors. Saturated means how much paint pigment is in the color. Dull colors are called low intensity colors, low chroma. They're also considered muted or grayed, low saturation. You can gray these colors down even further to create tones of gray, beige, brown, or khaki. They all originate from those same 6 highly intense, high, brightly saturated colors. They can be grayed. Let's see how you can do it. So when we start with the colors on our color wheel, these ones right down the center, we'll see that the brightest colors, except for yellow, are mid-value. They're mid-value on the value scale. Let's look at how we can see that. Let's take a look at this grape. It looks really bright. It's filled with light. Sunlight's pouring, actually coming through it. It's translucent. It looks light to me, to my eye. But when I put a value scale up there, I notice that it's mid-value. If I turn this from a color photo to a black and white photo, I can see that really easily. That grape is mid-value. The yellow-green, not so much, because remember I said yellows come out of the tube bright at a lighter value. They're the one exception to this. All bright colors are mid-value rule. Well, it's not really a rule. It's a tool to help us think this through. Another way to get your colors to look brighter is to increase the value contrast around them. Here's a painting by my dear friend, Al Currier. I've turned his painting to black and white, and we're going to bring our attention to the light in the sky and the light in the puddle. And we're noticing that those two values are a number 2 value. The colors are also very bright because they contain yellow. But the colors on the ground in the puddles look a little brighter than the ones in the sky. And the reason for this is that the color in the sky is surrounded by values that don't create a very big contrast. The ones on the ground are surrounded by black or by a value that creates a bigger contrast. The color on the ground looks brighter because it's surrounded by something darker and duller. You can drop the intensity of a color without changing the value. To lower the chroma or intensity of a light color, you add white. And what that does is the white just simply thins out the paint and desaturates it, makes there be less of the color pigment. To change the intensity of a color going dark, you add black, and that lowers the chroma by, again, diluting that color with black. And you can also change the intensity of those brilliant mid-value colors by creating a gray that's also mid-value. And adding it to the mid-value colors, you drop the intensity without changing the value. How easy is this to just think of black, white, and gray as ways to drop the intensity of a color, make it not so bright. Here's another way to do it. It's the way I like to do it in my palette. I tend to make a lot of mud when I'm painting with black. So when I adjust the intensity of a color, I will add drops of the complementary color. So let's take a look. Here's a yellow-green I clipped out of one of my paintings. And when we look at the color wheel, I'm going straight across the color wheel and looking the color directly across from it. That is the complement. So here I'm putting that complementary color next to this yellow-green, but it's really a lot darker. So before I add that pigment, I adjust it with white to be about the same value, so it doesn't change the value. If I were to put a dark pigment into a light pigment, I'm going to darken it. So what I do is add just a couple of little tiny drops of this adjusted red-violet and drop the intensity of my color. I feel like it gives me a more sparkling but lower intensity color than just gray alone. It's said in painting that color gets all the attention, but values do all the work. And I have found this to be true. So let's look at some of the ways that our number 2 color basic really help pull your painting together and do all the work in creating an amazing masterpiece. Tolstoy says that all the beauty of life is made up of light and shadow. Let's see how that works in a painting. First of all, values help create the bones of a painting. This little photo of a cat, I'm going to simplify it so you can see just the darks and lights. And we can see that the dark values and the light values create abstract shapes that will create the underlying undercarriage of the painting, that will create the interest, the compositional impact of the painting that just a cat laying on the floor wouldn't have all by itself, as cute as that kitty might be. Secondly, when we simplify values, those simplified values create the shapes of the composition. I'm turning this little image to black and white and simplifying it and showing how these mid values, the light values, and the small impact of dark values create the overall shapes of the composition that really help the viewer's eye flow through the image. In its most simple form, we can see how your eye flows through the center of the image and these diagonal patterns based on the impact of the light and dark values. The other thing values do is they explain the form of an object. When values pass over an object, we can see that where there are light values, we can reserve our values 1, 2, and 3 for sources of light and objects with direct sunlight on them. Where that object begins to turn, we use mid values. We'll save those values 4, 5, and 6 for our brilliant colors. Remember how bright colors are mid values? We are going to save those mid values for shadows with reflected light in them and for planes that are turning away from the light. So when we're explaining form, mid values explain where the object begins to turn away from the light. And we'll save our dark values, values 7, 8, and 9, for shade, shadows, and anything that doesn't have light shining directly on it. And that will expose the form and how light catches on it and shadows are cast. Values also reveal the time of day and the angle and intensity of the sunlight, even without color. We can see on this building that the time of day has changed. The intensity of sunlight has changed just by the impact of values. We can get a feel for the angle of the sunlight and where the sun is coming from. When we add the emotional impact of color, it really brings everything to life. By staging those values, we create the effect of sunlight. Remember how we looked at how values create form? It's the same way with creating that really brilliant light effect. So we save those values for specific uses. Here I've turned this photo to its simplified form again, just 3 basic values. So we can see values 1, 2, and 3 are reserved for the sun, the sky, and objects that have direct light shining on them. We save values 4, 5, and 6 for things that are really brilliantly colored. Keep an eye on these greens when I put the color back in these photos. Things that are turning away from light to shadow. Look at areas where the light is turning. For instance, right here where shade is turning to light, you'll see some mid-value forms right there. And we save values 7, 8, and 9 for shadow and things that have no light at all on them. When we bring the values back, or we bring the colors back, we can see what an impact those values really had on creating the effect of light. Values reveal the subtleties of shadow and light. Sometimes on a day that isn't really brilliantly lit, we can use values to reveal the beautiful aspects of shadow and light. Take a look here. All these shadows are in mid value. It would be very difficult to see these in full color because sometimes color confuses us. We get so excited by color because it vibrates and creates an emotional impact that it makes it really hard to see things like delicate shadows that are full of reflected light. When you see large value contrasts, a painting like this painting of the Rouen Cathedral by Monet, it's got a large value contrast from white to black. That shows us that there is strong light depicted. In this second painting of the same cathedral, it has a very small contrast between light and dark, and that depicts really soft lighting. We can see this when we bring the color back, the emotional impact, but we can also feel the strength of the light with those large value contrasts and the delicacy of the light with those small value contrasts. Here's another thing values do. If you didn't think that was enough, values can convey distance. Let's look at that idea of value contrast again. A large value contrast, all the way from black to white, can often be seen in the foreground. That value jump from light to dark is largest in the foreground. In the midground, that value jump becomes much smaller. In the background, you have an even smaller value jump, maybe just one value space away. And in the far distance, there is no jump at all or very little noticeable jump. The value jump, meaning the jump between light and dark, gets closer and closer together the farther into the distance you get. Aren't values amazing? So how do we see values? When we see in color, this is a question I get all the time from my students, and it's a valid one because color creates such a strong emotional reaction. It's really hard to see the values. So here's what I do when I'm outside on location. I have a red transparency with me, and I just put it between my eyes and what I'm looking at, and it blocks out enough of the color so that I can see values. It also darkens everything up a bit. You have to adjust for that, but it just blocks out enough color that I can understand what the values are doing. If I'm working from a photograph, I can use my photo editing software and just slide the saturation knob down so that I can see the values. And finally, there's a tried and true method, which is to squint. Squinting, really squinting, like looking through your eyelashes, squinting, can block out enough of the detail and color to help you see values. Take a try right now. Squint at something and see how much detail is lost. The values show up. So here's a thought. Even if you're looking at ordinary, dull color, you don't have to paint it that way. As the artist, you have the freedom to do something else. Degas says, art is not what you see, but what you make others see. Let's look at how Mother Nature does it. Even if you're looking at ordinary dull color, you don't need to paint it that way, and Mother Nature gives us a reason. Here I've taken a picture of a scene I saw every time I went to go teach in another town away. It's a cornfield and a mountain, very beautiful, but I was going at midday. In the afternoon, when I drive back again, you can see the values are quite similar. The scene is the same, but in the afternoon light, the colors are completely different. Completely different. That midday light washes out the extraordinary extravagance of color. So Mother Nature gives us a way to paint extraordinary, extravagant color just by working at the edge of the day. The hour before sunset, the hour after sunrise, those are called the golden hours. And you can see how golden things are here. And you can paint these brilliant colors of the same scene. So you can go ahead and go bold. Mother Nature tells you to, but you can also do that as an artist as well. We often have these preset, preconditioned ideas in our head. Like one of them in my head is that snow is white, that leafless tree branches and trunks are gray, and that evergreen trees are green. And when I look at this little hut, this little wood hut in the snow, my presuppositions are pretty much borne out. This is a photo took around midday. And yes, the branches and trunks are gray, the snow is white. The cast shadow on the snow is basically a grayish color. The evergreens in the back are green. But look what happened when I took this same picture first thing in the morning. All my presupposed ideas are out the window. The snow is coral. The shadows are blue-violet. The trunks of the trees are orange. The shadows on those evergreen trees are violet. The little hut is bright yellow. So you can take this clue from Mother Nature. You don't have to go with what your preconceived ideas are. You can go ahead. You can go bold. What colors do you think belong in this image? What are your presets? My presets say the beach is beige, maybe brown cliffs. The trees are green. There must be some blue in the water. But, whoa, let's take a look at what it really is. This photo I took on Prince Edward Island where the ground is red. It makes the greens so vibrant. And it changes your preset ideas of what colors might be into something more bold. Mother Nature gives us the right to do this. So why don't you just take it on yourself to go ahead and go bold? Here's a couple of images I used to paint from. One is of a snowy scene in March in a little town in the Cascade foothills, and another is on a windswept beach in Maine. I took these photos and I did some paintings from them. But I went ahead, used the values from the photograph, but I used colors that were more bold and more exciting. Here's the original photographs. I stayed relatively true to the values, but I went ahead and went bold with color. Freedom with color creates a much more powerful painting, and you can say more of what you want to say when you have that freedom with color by staying true to the values and going crazy with the colors. Freedom with color creates a more powerful painting. Here's some black and white photos of some favorite artists, and we can see that through the black and whites, they stayed very true to the values, that number 2, color basic. Every one of these artists stayed quite true to their values. But when we release the color, who knew that there was a bright yellow and turquoise sky, or a brilliant, almost electric blue mountain, or crazy orange and blue clouds, or a green face? When you stay true to the values, you can have freedom with color. You can go crazy with color. You can explore and experiment and have fun doing it. Imagine what you could do if you were not held back by the limitations in your mind, but you could go ahead and explore. Imagine what you could do if you had the freedom to just play with color and explore. wait a minute. Why is there a picture of an old Ford? Well, this is as close to the image of the car I learned to drive in when I was 16. I was learning to drive in the winter. This old car had a standard transmission, 3 on the tree, bald tires. I would be driving along, put the brake on, slide on the ice, pirouette out into traffic. Sometimes I'd put in the clutch, it would roll back and hit the car behind me. These experiences made me a white-knuckled driver. I was terrified. I read all the books. I could pass the written driving test, but actually driving the car was terrifying. And pretty soon, though, after a year of experimenting of back roads with my dad hiding behind his hands, I learned how to drive this car. And after some time on the road, I passed my test. And after years and years of driving, I am a relaxed, confident driver. Also, getting a little better equipment didn't hurt either. But that relaxed, focused attention is what we're looking at. And it comes from years behind the wheel or years behind the paintbrush. So let's talk about that freedom with color. Number one, it takes a while behind the paintbrush, but know that you're not going to be falling out into traffic or smacking into other cars behind you. You're safe. You're safe if you experiment with color, but it does take some time behind the brush. So here's some things you need to know about freedom with color. Understand this. This is the key to it all. Correct value is more important than correct color. Number two, learn how to see the values of colors, either with red transparency or by sliding down the saturation knob or by squinting. Learn how to translate that color into a value. And the third thing is to learn how to change the value of your paints. What do you need to do to take a paint that's too dark and lighten it, or a paint that's too light and darken it? How do you change the values of your paints? And the fourth one is use a limited palette like I showed you. Just 3 simple primary colors in white and often black. Use a limited palette. You really can't go wrong. You're safe. So here's some things you can say to yourself as you start painting, especially if you're a little scared. You can say, I'm okay. I can't mess this up. So without any further hindrance to this party, let's go. Let's paint. And I'll show you some quick, easy tips, and I'll show you some things I do with my palette to create colors that give me more freedom with color. Let's paint. Let's get started with the demo. I've printed this up in black and white on my printer, and I've gotten a 8.5 by 11 clear plastic document sleeve. I'm going to slide this right in there. And I think I'm going to crop this a little bit. There's some things I want to do, and I want to turn it into a square, number one. It seems to have a lot of irrelevant material in here that I would like to remove. So I'm just going to turn it into a square. The other thing I want to do is I'm seeing that this branch is just stopping right at the top of the hill. I'm going to bring it over a little bit. And this one needs to be a little higher to balance the sides of the page. Maybe not that high. Anyway, I'm using a dry erase marker so I can just take my thumb or a paper towel and erase away. I'm going to try out some different color combinations on here. Here's my palette. So I'm just going to put a piece of tape up here to hold it in place while I'm investigating. And I'm going to try out some ideas. When I took this picture, it was a misty morning and everything was pearly gray. But I'm thinking it doesn't need to be pearly gray. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up a variety of colors. These are my primary colors. This is phthalo blue green shade, ultramarine blue, primary magenta, and cadmium yellow medium. So first of all, I'm going to just mix up an orange. This is the secondary color, the orange. And then a lavender or purple. When I mix up a purple, I try to get 50-50 of my ultramarine and my red, but I am going to put a little bit of white in there so I can see the purple color. It just lets me see the color a little better. Let's try purple with phthalo. Now I think phthalo is going to be a little bit of a different color purple. Really, this looks black. If I want a black color, this might be the color I use. Let's open it out a little bit. Yeah, it's a different, softer kind of a violet. Finally, let's mix up a green. Here's my ultramarine. Ultramarine's easy to mix green from. Phthalo, you only need a drop. So here's my green. Isn't that beautiful color? And then I'm going to mix a yellow green to see what that looks like. So I'm trying to keep my colors in kind of a color wheel so that I can see what I've done and where I'm going. Now, if I want to lighten a color, I can add white. Here we go, white to that. Let's make a blue-green and then lighten it. See what that looks like. Phthalo makes these really bright, interesting greens. Okay, now I just get to use my imagination on here. Oh no, my camera shut off for a minute while I was painting this. Hopefully it'll stay on now. I'd really like to get through this. But now I'm thinking, what if I took ultramarine blue? I'm thinking of that soft time of morning, and I'm going to try mixing up a value, the same value as the mountain, but a color, blue in this case, just ultramarine blue with white. And I'll see what this looks like. I remember seeing a morning like this. It was just so soft and lovely. Ooh, I like that color. Now, I think the water would be reflecting something that's above it. So I'm wondering what that would be. It's probably going to be reflecting something of a yellowish nature. But as we go higher in the sky, as this reflects stuff that's higher, I'm thinking, maybe some pale blue. This pale greeny blue. I should have done that over with the greens to be consistent. Now, when I'm painting on this plastic, I have to use a lot of paint because otherwise it just beads up and doesn't cover. But I'm using this color so I can see if I like these colors, if they're going to work for me. The next thing I'm seeing is these trees, and I'm wondering what would happen if I made them violet. Now, that's a little bit too dark. They've got to be a little bit lighter. They're dark, but they're a mid-value dark. If I can see my value scale real quick, I'll go there. Ooh, but I like these ones better. This color with the phthalo. I'm just making this up, guys. So if it's, oh no, it needs to be darker. If it looks terrible, I have only myself to blame. There's a little building here. It might be a set of two buildings, but it's kind of an ugly little building. So I might change it or something. There's a little extra dark, just slightly darker here. And as I move down towards the shoreline, it gets slightly darker. I have to save my main darks for this area right here. I can see where I'm going. Ooh, what if my main dark was like this dark red violet? So all these colors would have to be a little, oh, that just switched it to blue violet. The phthalo made a mess. I just have to make sure it's darker than what's behind. And this is just an experiment. I don't know if it's going to work out, but I'm feeling like, oops, this color has to go into the reflection. I'm feeling like it might work out. So why not give it a try? Now this color would go into this reflection. And I'm going to save those light colors and just sort of scrape them across as I go. There's a really, really, really dark little passageway under the building here. Not as dark as the trees, but it needs to be some other color. How about something like this back here, that farm building? And then this magenta I'm going to bring up. Ooh, look at how beautiful it is against the sky, against that yellow sky. I'm kind of thinking I like it, just in purples and yellows with just a touch of green. Now I'm going to come back, and there's some real dark areas. I can see there's some darker darks right along here with these grasses in super, super dark. And back here, and some trunks that are dark. I'm going to get a little bit of that warm ultramarine and white because I'd like a couple of sky holes through here. That might need to be a little darker. When you're doing sky holes, sometimes they're a little bit darker than the color they're going through because the leaves are flickering, moving in and out. Like that. There's a really light, and I don't know if this is quite dry enough to do this yet, but I'm going to give it a try. Just, there's like this, ooh, white. Like it's real, like a bright, shiny reflection of sunlight. I made it too wide, but I can go back and fix. And really, I just made them up. I just invented these colors as a way to think about something different than what I saw out there, which was just gray. It was all just a gray morning. Silvery gray is beautiful. Silvery gray is really, really beautiful, but you can make changes. You can decide to do something a little bit different in your painting. This is what I'm talking about. That things can be different. I think I need some more of this bright yellow back in here. And then there's I lost this reflection piece right here, and it's a little darker. So I'll just take this reflection piece and come back, and then this little bit of light, just using the really thin tip of my brush. It's also reflecting on the roof of this building, and maybe a little bit of this bluish color on the roof of the other building down below. I'm seeing a little path, and this might be where the orange comes in. I just mixed some orange with the purple to give it like a little bit of brightness, like it's laying flat looking up at the sky. And also for some of these branches and a little bit of shadow inside the tree. Let's take a look. Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, I have a 12-inch square panel. It's just a piece of masonite that's been cradled, but you can use anything, a canvas, some canvas paper, whatever you'd like. So I'm gonna just start sketching in what I'd like to see. Just kind of like a basic, little bit of an outline where I want the main characters in this thing to be. Once I get these characters in, little bits of grasses and whatnot, I'm going to start mixing up some shades of gray, but I'll put a gray wash on here. Now, I don't normally use gray for my washes, but in this case, I'm going to paint this in black and white before I start. What I have is a 2-inch wash brush. I got this at Michael's. It was in a blister pack. Like it's really old. I probably got it 20 years ago or something, but it's just a 2-inch wide brush. I've got some black paint and white paint here on a paper plate that I've dampened. And I put water on the plate and then wiped the water away. And now I'm going to just make a wash of this with a lot of water. This is the only time really in my painting process that I'm going to use a ton of water in my paint, because you break down the binder of your paint when you add water. So I'm just putting on a wash and then taking my paper towel and wiping away where I want the light areas. So I'm going to start this whole idea of this painting. Now, when I want to go the next step darker, with a little bit darker, I'm just going to dip into this black. Now, remember, I made this tree a little higher in my image. This one, these two. At this point, I'm fast forwarding this painting of the black and white on my canvas. I am using a value scale to test my values, to see how dark to make my mixtures of black, white, and gray. And I am using my little value scale. Hopefully you can download it off the website, but I'm using that value scale to test out the values to make sure I get them right, because as I've been hammering home, values are the most important thing here. So in fast forwarding this, you're going to see me paint this again. So I didn't think you needed to see this in real time, but just to see where the dark, the medium, and the light values go in here, as a way to find my way through the color mixtures in just a few minutes. I find this to be a very helpful technique when I need to understand my values. I'm going to paint my colors right on top of this value mixture, just like I did on top of the plastic. So this will be something I paint right on top of in just a minute. Okay, I'm going to go stash these paints so I don't waste them. I'm going to put them back in the jars and get my colors out. I'm going to dry this and I'll be right back. Now I've put up my palette, the one that I mixed these colors in. I have just off to the side, I've put my color study. So I remember what my colors are. And I'm going to remix some of this blue that was the mountain. Now I'm remembering what value, so I need to make sure it's the same value I have up here. Yeah, you can see that's one of the hardest things to do, is translate color into value. And you can do it a number of different ways. You can look through a red plastic viewfinder. You can put everything onto your computer and take down the saturation. You can squint. You can get out your little value finder and compare. I'm just gonna work right on top of my black and white in the colors that I remember doing this in. And I'm using a, what is this? A number 8 flat. It doesn't really matter the size of brush. I like a bigger brush when I'm doing a big painting like this. I've rinsed my brush, rinsing it again. And I have my swishing water just off the camera. And Then I wipe it and I'm ready to switch colors. Here's that beautiful bright yellow, that morning color. I don't know if you experience this butter yellow sky in the morning where you live, but I do. I see it and it's so amazing and beautiful. I think it needs more yellow. I made it just a little too delicate. I want it more. And I'm not going to be really afraid of going over the edges because I'm going to come back over them again. It's not one and done here. It's really, well, I think I want to put in the streaks, the reflection streaks as well. We'll get to that. Because that is that blue violet, that beautiful blue violet. So I'm mixing up a blue violet, and what I'm doing is I'm checking how dark it is. It needs to be, oh, too much phthalo. Ooh. It needs to be mid value. There we go. Well, it was a little in my color study, it was a little warmer than that, a little more red in it. And I'm blocking this in, which means I'm getting the big spaces, the big shapes down first. And once I've got it all blocked in, and I've got all the colors in, then I'll come back and do the smaller colors and the smaller shapes. If I can see the smaller shapes right away, I'll get them in. Like there's a little bit darker stuff down here. Not quite that dark because I have to leave some room for darks in the foreground. Most of the darks appear in this image in the foreground. So, but I do see it slightly darker near the shoreline. I hope you do too. And then in some of these bushes. I struggle with doing air holes through trees, so I will just continue going back and forth on those. But here's what I need to do next is just bring down these reflections. I'm going to go right through this white stuff and I'll paint over the white, but I'm going to bring down here's the reflection from the tree. It just comes down. Here's the reflection from this tree. And then it gets more subtle. A softer value. Okay, so I'm really, really loving this purple yellow image. They're opposites on the color wheel, and it really is has a nice feel that I like. And I'm just going to go back and forth a little bit between these two colors just for a minute until I get what I like here, or between the three colors, the yellow sky, the top of the mountain, the inside of this tree. I'll go switch to my dark red violet. Now to get that dark red violet, I'm remembering I had to use some phthalo and red. That's too dark. It's darker than the background, but I still have to give myself room for the really dark spaces in the foreground and in the center of this tree. But what I'm loving is when these violets bump up against the sky, I think something really beautiful is starting to happen, which is what I'd hoped for in this. I want this to be a little bit lighter. A little more. And again, I'm just putting in these big shapes. A little darker. Here's my that dark color I made down here. And I'm going to slip in a little bit of yellow and red. Get it dark. It's not going to be black, but it'll be dark. There's these darkish shapes right here. And I'm going to pull them down into the reflection in the water. There's similar kind of darkish shape coming up through the center of this tree. And then there's a mid-value shape that's just slightly darker than that. I'm going to make it mid-value, but a little bit warmer. Slightly darker. It's fun. It's just staging these values, staging the colors. Making them each have their own kind of little identity. Pretty. Now I've got too much dark down here, but I think that's okay because what I'm going to end up doing is overlapping some of the color of the water. So I'm looking for a dark that's a little bit different for in here. In under this, it's like this farm building, so why not green? And why not dark purple? It's in that deep shadow. Now I'm going to just start working on a few of these little patches of color and patches of light, places where I've messed up, because I mess up. I've got a number 10 brush here. And I don't know, I mean, really, when you're doing an experiment like this, what is messing up? What does that actually mean? Well, for me, it just means I've done something that I didn't want to do. So I've done something or made a color or made a blob that just doesn't satisfy me. That's what I mean by messing up. There really isn't huge, I mean, there are tools you use in painting. But if you think that you have to obey every rule, that there's something out there that you have to obey, that's probably not quite right, because the best artists are the ones that know what the tools of art are and know when it's okay to not use them. Really, my rule of thumb here is just make it look good. If it looks beautiful, you've done a good job. If it looks terrible, maybe rethink a part. I mean, it's really hard to know what to do when your painting looks terrible. Sometimes it's just really hard to understand what it is you need to do to change it, to make it look better. So the big thing here is to step back and look and squint. I'm switching to a color shaper. It's like a rubber spatula. I use it instead of a palette knife. And the reason I do it is I can get a lot more paint up here. But I love what thick paint does to a painting. And I love the idea of just putting a lot of beautiful thick paint where it looks like it belongs. So that too is a judgment call. Where does this paint belong? Oh, it's so much fun to explore and experiment when you just have a few tools to get you started. And you realize that every time you paint, you discover something new about yourself. You discover a new technique, a new tool to use, a new fun way of expressing yourself. And it's all good. The frustrations arise when we place expectations on ourselves that don't belong there. For instance, if you feel like your painting should look different than it does, figure out why it doesn't look the way you wanted it to look. Is it a perspective problem? Is the paint too thin? Did you want bigger brush marks? All of those things are fixable if you just take it on yourself to have the courage to fix them. And art does take courage. There are some things in painting that take a lot of courage. Just to get over the fact that you might not make this perfect on the first try, that's a huge one. A lot of people do not like the idea of failing, and they think art, for some reason, is different than anything else, or painting is different than anything else. You should just have it. Wouldn't that be silly if that's the way you felt about playing the piano or learning dance steps? You have to practice and fail, make a few clinkers, and then figure out what you're doing wrong. A lot of athletes watch themselves, watch tapes of themselves and figure out what they did wrong, what they need to do better next time, what they need to do to fix it. Same way here with painting. We're just going to paint, do our best, and then later on, we'll look at it more analytically and say, what did I do right? What did I learn? The most important thing is, what did I learn? If you learned a new technique, if you learned a new way of applying the paint that works for you, that resonates with you in an interesting way, all of these are wins, huge wins. There sort of isn't anything better than a huge win, even if you don't keep the painting. I'm going to find this pale blue violet again. And because, that phthalo, because I've got this in a color wheel, it's a little easier to find the second time. And I just have to remember the value. A little bit warmer and a little darker. Now, every time I use this tool, no matter how many times I tell you what it is, there'll be people who just tuned in and don't know what I'm using and ask me the question. So here it is again. It's just a rubber spatula tool called a color shaper or a painting blade. You can get it wherever paintbrushes are sold. Any, art section of an art store. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them online in online art stores. Or you can get a little rubber spatula at the dollar store if you want. And I just use it instead of a palette knife because I tend to drag my knuckles through my painting when I'm using a palette knife. And it's not pleasant. That's not a color I wanted. So I'm trying to go just a little darker in some areas within this value range, a little lighter in some areas, still within this same main value range. So I don't get mixed up between the sky and the land. I'm sort of liking that. I'm not really in love with this yet, so I'm still going to work on it. And then get those white, I think what that white stuff is sunlight shining on old lily pads. And so I'll work on that a little bit. Sunlight shining on lily pads and get those sun streaks in there. Find a way for my darks and lights to all be part of this. I'm going to get one thing just a step darker. One thing a step lighter, or even a half step lighter. And I'm using the painting blade because it puts a lot of paint onto the canvas, and I like that. And I will switch back and forth between tools. I'm not worried about doing that either. When I want to darken something, again, I add blue or red or a combination of blue and red. If there's too much white in the mixture, I need to scrape it back and start over, because white will mess up will lighten the value of a thing too much. So I'm thinking in my head as I go, darker, lighter, warmer, cooler, brighter, duller, thicker, thinner. I'm thinking of those things as I put the paint down. And I'm also thinking about the overall image. When do I feel like it could be done? Where does it look weird? Where do I have colors that aren't appropriate to my image? Where have I not quite finished an idea? And so to do that, I just keep looking, tracking all over the page, looking for areas that might not be entirely done. But what I'm loving is this fun idea of color in here. It's really exciting to me to see this, what's happened with this color. I want to bring a little bit more of this blue of the mountain or the hill slope. It's too much the cross, and I want to bring it down a little more. So all I do is remember that I was using ultramarine and white. That's not hard. Not hard at all to remember that. I'm going to take a yellowy white color. Oops, no, there's some green in that one. I don't want green in it. I just want yellow and white. I have my paints in jars, so if I don't spoil them by getting them too messed up, I can put the large part of these back in jars. I also have a fishing tackle box, so if they're a little messy, I can put them away in a fishing tackle box. So there is a light sparkle right here, and it comes this way and this way, and off this direction. And I'm just using the very tip of this because it leaves a little sparkly edge. Same way here. Just find that color again and just find that little sparkle edge. Wipe. I'm wiping this off. And I'm going to drag the paint. So just so it makes little dots across the surface here. I'm not going to put all the dots in because I feel like that's too many, but I will put some of them. And the ones in the front are going to need to be bigger and wider than the ones in the back. Now there's some laying in the surface that are almost pure white. So I'm just adding a few here and there, squinting, coming back, figuring out where else they need to be. Whoops, that was a pretty big blob. I might have to come back in and fix that blob. And then I think what I'm seeing is some of these sparkly things are in the shadow back here. So I just turned them into a shadowy color. Give a more pure white. Whoop, that is not the color I wanted on there. Just take it off. If you're using a brush, just use the edge. Like the brush has a flat edge. So if you're using a brush on this, get your paint on your brush and just use that flat edge. Don't push hard on the brush. Just flick little bits of paint onto this with the edge of your brush. Wherever you don't like what you did, you can go back and take the color of the sky reflection and just paint right over the top of what you did so it doesn't show. But I'm kind of liking what's happening with my tool here. I don't like this mess or this mess yet. So just spend a couple more minutes addressing this messy area here. And then also a couple more minutes getting a darker value in for some stems in here. I'm using the corner of this to drag through my paint and make little marks, which I love. I love all these little textural marks and details. So that's part of my feeling in my painting, is to just get some little marks of texture. A little bit more dark. Make sure there's no white mixed up in that. Tiny touch of yellow in there. Maybe some of this green. So I want this to be really, really, really dark and sort of stand out just a little bit from the rest of the foliage. Just a couple more darkish moments through here. And I'm going to call it done. And if I need to put anything else on here, I'll look at it again tomorrow. Oops, there's one spot here that I don't like where the paint kind of rubbed off or something. I don't like that spot, but I run the risk of changing this and then having to paint it to a whole new level. And I kind of like the feeling of the color and the light of the day and the image as I have it. So maybe just a few more little delicate sky holes up near the edges. Okay, for the end of this, can you stand one more little trick? I don't know, but I have another one of those sheet protectors that I've ripped in half, and I'm going to put it on my dried painting. I'm noticing something. I think this band of trees doesn't look as purple as I want. This dried a little dark. So I'm going to experiment on here without wrecking the painting that I've already established. I'm going to mix up this mountain color a little lighter and get it on there. And I'm just painting, again, just painting on top of this plastic to see what it looks like on my piece. So I don't have to experiment on a painting that I'm pretty happy with. Not sure if I'm completely happy with. I just want to, ooh, look at that. That made this band really pop out. I'm going to darken up the top edge just so it looks like maybe there's a little bit of mist coming up underneath. See if I like what I do here. I'm going to put it on the painting. If I don't like it, I'm not going to put it on the painting. That's as easy as that. So I think the sky could use a little bit of change, like not quite all just a slab of yellow, but maybe just a little bit of a lighter bit right by the tops of the hill here. And then down here, I remember I had put some green and it didn't really show up. So I'm going to try a little bit of that greenish color just here. And then that color, I really want it to be more purple, like violet. So I'm going to get out my ultramarine blue and my red. There's already some white on the brush. And I'm going to make it more violet, less blue and more violet. Lighter, a little bit lighter. I want it to fade back into the background, and lighter does that. You can see I can change a lot of stuff here. I'm going to leave this darker stuff near the bottom. Oh, look at that. I'm not even looking at my reference photo anymore. I'm just trying to decide if this is what I want. If I'd really rather, I'm not sure about this color. I can take it off, but what I might like to find in this painting is just some little bits of bright color. And if I don't like those bits of bright color, they're coming off. So I have messed with it, and I can just take the color off that I don't like. Look at that, it just comes off. Or I can paint on top of it again. This just a gentler blue violet, ultramarine, a drop of red, a gentler blue violet. There we go. That's what I want. Just an altogether. But you don't have to go gentler. You can go crazier. And really, we're painting on plastic. We can go as crazy as we want. It doesn't have to be any of this. It doesn't have to be sweet or gentle or believable or anything. It can be anything that your imagination comes up with. Woo! Look at that red. See, I am just going for it. Just playing with color because I can. And look at how beautiful that is. It is gorgeous. And bold can be really fun. Bold can be contemporary. I'm not painting it over here because the plastic ran out. But look at how beautiful this change in colors is. And before I work on my painting, I can lift this off and see if my change in colors is what I want. And I really kind of like the boldness of my changes. I might do it. Here's the final piece as it is now. I'll probably work on it some more in a week or so, but I applied some of those colors that I put on the plastic sheet, and I really kind of like the way it turned out. I hope you try a bunch of different colors, and I hope you have as much fun as I did painting your painting.
Okay, that was so awesome. And I just want to jump into this homework just so you know with clarity what your assignment is. If you want to follow this through, you're going to choose a black and white photo. Now you can use the one that Diana painted from, or you could choose one of your own, but you're going to do a study in black and white. You're going to just paint those values as you see the darks and the lights, and you're going to lay out that whole design on the canvas, and then you're going to paint over it with color. And you're going to just have fun with that color, right? You see how Diana did that. She established the darks, the lights, the midtones, and then played around with color. If you have a plastic sheet, you can use it. You don't have to at all. That's an extra thing. The main thing is just get those values down on your canvas, and then we're going to play with color and have freedom with it. If you need any reference photos, if you need anything, always go to acrylicuniversity.com/radiant. And I'm super excited. We're going to bring Diana up on stage again in just a little bit. We can do it right now, but
yeah.
We're going to have a special time of a Q&A at the very end. But we're going to give away a prize before we get there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my computer. If you remember last time, we had a little bit of a hiccup where I did not get this ready. So Peter, can we pull up the wheel of names? If you don't know what the prize is, today we're giving away another $200 gift card for Blick Art Supplies. Are you ready for me to press this button and see who wins? I want to see. I'm ready. All right. I see a lot of people already saying giveaway, things like that. Yes, this was so amazing. This lesson by Dana, I hope you will grab hold of. Okay, ready. Here we go. Click to spin, and we will see who wins. I love it. I love it. I love it. And the winner is Patricia Arimborgo. I think I said it right. So if you won, Peter will put up there, you should just respond to our support at acrylicuniversity.com. Make sure that we know your mailing address so we can send that gift card to you. And I think that it's time to bring Diana on stage. We'll show some of the, I'll give you guys another look at the homework in a minute at the very end, but we've got time for a Q&A here. So throw out any questions that you have. But first of all, I just want to say again, thank you, Diana. Everybody, let's give Diana a round of applause for teaching her. Your painting was gorgeous. And I think every time you throw in a little extra insight for us, that like I always feel like I learned something extra from you. So thank you.
Well, thanks. And I really appreciate all the kind comments. It means a lot. Sometimes people don't know the impact their statements have, and it's powerful. It's really huge. So thank you very much for being supportive of me too.
I saw one question already that somebody said, why are you wearing gloves?
Oh, well, I've got a camera, a computer screen that I have to touch, and the gloves really dry out quickly. So when I touch that stuff, I don't get paint all over it. And the other reason is I like to smear edges with my finger, and I can just not get it all in my cuticles and under my fingernails. So that's it.
Do you know this? What color line were you using? Do you understand that question?
When I was drawing on the canvas, maybe it was black. I just used black.
Okay. And why do you like square paintings if they are special to you? I don't know if they are.
I don't know. It's fun to format a composition on a square. I enjoy it. And it's not everybody's taste, but I like the kind of contemporary way the shapes come out on a square canvas.
How do you keep your palette moist?
Right.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah, Jed and I both use a Masterson's Stay Wet palette. And if you follow the instructions and really soak that paper, get the paper that goes on top of it really wet, um, it'll keep your palette moist. I ditched the sponge long ago and used some shop towels instead of the sponge because they're disposable and they seem to hold on to the water better. But you don't need to. The sponge works as long as you follow those instructions.
Yeah, you got to keep it clean. Okay,
Yeah.
what brushes do you think are best for acrylic painting?
Well, I think, don't you use synthetic too? I use synthetic. They're made especially for acrylic paint. Natural bristles, if you leave them in the water, they just go mushy. So just look for brushes that were made for acrylics.
Here's a question kind of related to brushes. Diana, will you please do a tutorial on just the shaper and using it compared to the brush?
If you watch enough of my demos, you will see them compared side by side. I will try to remember that at some point. And if you are a member, you'll probably see it in one of my workshops throughout the year. So we'll try it.
Sounds good. Why did you choose phthalo blue green shade and not red shade?
Oh, well, because the ultramarine is already a red shade, and the phthalo blue green shade is like gives the blue a more rounded, like I can mix them together and get a true blue that isn't green, isn't purpley. The phthalo tends to be brighter, so I can get a really bright green or bright blue. Ultramarine tends to be a little softer. So that's it. The phthalo then becomes like the opposite blue. I don't know how better to describe that. Why do you do it, Jed?
No, well, this is kind of related, right?
Mhm.
I'm having trouble making the beautiful violets. Could it be my red paint hue using cadmium red medium?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Cadmium red medium has yellow in it. It's got like an orange under base, and that will turn your violets brown. So use that primary magenta instead, and you'll have gorgeous violets.
Yeah. Do you use heavy body paints?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Yes. Okay. In the paintings behind you of people, did you go bold with color or try to match the color more?
I went pretty bold. I tried to get a lot of reflected light in there. In fact, let's take a look at one of these. Get up close. Take a look at the light and the color in that skin. There's so much green reflected light that when it's at a distance, it looks like a little face. When it's close up, you can see that I really did go bold.
What's the difference between using titanium white, zinc white, and mixing white?
Go for it, Jed.
Well, so titanium white is opaque. Zinc white and mixing white, I believe, are the same thing, and they're both quite transparent. So you will mix it, it will lighten the color, but it won't cover what's underneath it as much as titanium white. Titanium white is very opaque, and therefore you can cover up darker colors easier with it.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a good question. Brenda asks, will the acrylic paints adhere to the canvas well after doing the black wash? I'm thinking of long-term for archival reasons.
Yes, they will. They cover that initial wash up completely. And then when you varnish it, it's all sealed in. Nothing's gonna come off. If you use a lot of water throughout the painting, that'll break the binder, and you'll definitely have to put a sealant on it to keep it all in place.
What brand of paint are you using?
I'm using a combination of Golden and Winsor Newton. Jed got me excited about Winsor Newton because there's less color shift when it dries. So, but Golden has those great big jars. So it's hard for me to get away from the giant jars of paint.
That's awesome. Cadmium paints have metals in them, right?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe that cadmium is a toxic metal, and a lot of paints do. And mostly it's toxic if you sand it and it's airborne. But if it gets in the water system, it can be bad as well. But if you go on the Golden website, they have some really great resources for recycling paint water. And a lot of times the toxicity level is written right on the tube or the jar of paint.
Gotcha. Okay, wonderful lesson. Do you ever use a glazing medium or thin the paint to glaze?
I do. When I need to change an overall color or I need to have a thin layer more watercolory, I will do that, but not very often, but I do.
This actually is helpful for me. I read this and I go, oh, that's what they were referring to. I think the color line referred to the brand of paint. Yeah, so you just answered that. That kind of makes sense now. We're both
that
like,
makes sense.
what was the color line? We're like,
Right.
oh, okay, gotcha. Thank you for clarifying that. What kind of plastic do you use to put over the canvas?
Just one of those plastic document sleeves. I just opened it up and I put it on top of the canvas after the paint was dry, so it didn't mess up. If you put that on the wet paint, it'll mess up your paint. Wait till the paint's dry.
Yeah. Here's a question. I think I'd love to hear your answer on this. Which black is best for making your colors darker without changing the color? You don't use black, so
I use black. Not in my color mixing. Jed does it really effectively. I tend to make mud with any black color I try. I've occasionally have successfully used black without making mud, but Jed does it on a regular basis. So what brand do you use, or what color do you use?
Well, I use Mars Black more than anything. Ivory Black is a little bit more transparent. Mars Black is more opaque. I don't use it all the time though, because I've started mixing my black more, and I like that. If I'm using black to darken a color, I think that it usually does. I mean, when you say how do you do it and not change the color, there's no way that you can mix black in with something and not change that color. It's going to dull it down. It's going to, usually, like if it's a yellow, it's going to make it look more green. But I don't know. I tend to use Mars Black. That's my general answer for that.
Yep.
Okay, here's a good question. Where do I find the photo for the second challenge? Okay, let me just show my show this screen here so you can see all replays, reference photos, supply lists, homework, and more at acrylicuniversity.com/radiant. That's where this reference photo is. That's where all your reference photos will be, and forms, helpful information, anything that you need, it's all going to be right there. Thank you for that question, though. It's a good reminder. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I see a question we haven't had yet. How big is your paint scraper?
It's an inch. I have a 1/2 inch blade and a 1 inch blade.
Okay, here's another one. Do you recommend a resource for color combinations? Now, I'm just thinking about how you choose colors based more on the scene. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. There's lots of books and tools out there, lots of reference books. And I'm trying to think of the best one. The author's name is Gurney. He did a great book on color and color combinations. And I'm trying to remember his first name because all of a sudden I'm like a deer in the headlights with names. But there's a dinosaur on the front of his book. But it's a great book on colors. How about you, Jed? Do you have a reference?
I don't use. So in terms of color combinations, I I've really enjoyed having a simple set of colors on my palette. And all I do is I will shift them a little bit this way or that. So for instance, I might use cadmium yellow light. That's a go-to. I hardly ever change from that. That's almost always my yellow. But sometimes I will add cadmium yellow deep or dark to it just in case I want to. Or what is a little bit more common, I'll add cadmium orange in there. And so that's going to like shift my palette from, it'll allow me to make those really deep, rich yellows and oranges and all of that kind of range of colors in there. But then I usually only have one red, and that could either be a cadmium type of red that leans towards orange, or it could be the quinacridone magenta type of red that leans towards violet. So it just depends. I don't have a long list of colors that I use, or oh, these colors work together, but these ones won't work together. So to me, it's like you get your primary colors, and I usually have a couple of each that I will use, but I won't use them all at the same time. And then it's just kind of like, what feeling am I going for in the paints, in the colors, and in the scene? Is it going to be really warm? If I'm painting a desert scene, I'm probably going to have orange, cadmium orange in there. I'm going to have yellows. I'm going to have the warmer reds, and I'm going to lean to, I'm not going to be like, I'm just going to like choose my colors different for that scene than I would if it was a spring scene in a lush forest, or like a meadow with lots of greens. I'm gonna like choose my blues a little different, and I might double up. I might have both of my blues out so that I have more range of mixing greens.
That's right. Yeah. And if you're a member of Acrylic University, I have a workshop just based on that. How do you pick out the best groupings of colors for the image you want to create? That is in the spring colors workshop. There's also one in the fall colors workshop. So you can, if you're a member, you can have access to those anytime you want.
Okay, I've seen this question a few times, so I want to answer it. Do you not paint over the edges? So I think she's saying, like, if you had a canvas or a panel that had edges, would you take the painting over the edge? Or would you just paint the edges black or leave them natural or something?
Depends on how I'm going to frame it. If I'm going to frame it, I don't paint the edges. If I have a thick canvas and I'm not going to frame it, I'll paint the edges black. How about you, Jed? What do you do?
I never paint the edges. I do as the least amount of work as possible. And I feel like if I paint the front of the canvas, that's good enough for me. And I'll just paint the edges. I'll paint the edges black, or in a case like this, where this is a panel, I will just leave the panel unpainted and it's wood, and I think it looks good enough. Okay, so I see this one other question. This is related to, what's the difference between VIP or membership? So if you've signed up for VIP, that is for this masterclass alone. That doesn't have anything to do with our membership. Actually, it just has to do with just some special perks that you get to be part of here during the masterclass, and including the replays. But membership is like, it's just a different world. It's 1,000 times more and everything. So totally different.
There's so many resources for the members. I mean, a lifetime of things you can look at and do and follow. And it's amazing. So
I don't know, Peter, do you want to come on stage here? I know we're about to wrap up, and Peter's been working hard behind the scenes here. I don't even know. It's funny because at the very beginning, I was thinking you come on with us, but hey, man.
Yeah. Well, he didn't say my name, so I just thought you guys got it under control.
Well, there you are. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too. You guys did a great job.
Is there anything that we need to cover, Peter? I have a couple more slides I could show. But is there any questions that I missed that you saw that we should be grabbing?
I don't think so. Yeah, we'll have more info about the membership on Friday, guys. It'll be very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Deborah, I was wondering about Peter. Yep, I've been here. Just making sure, holding down the fort, making sure nothing crazy is happening. Although the moderators have I have my work cut out for me. They're they're quick on the draw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
great
well,
job today, everybody.
let me show this last little bit here.
Yeah, go for it.
Just so we can get through the schedule. So next thing for everybody is 8 a.m. on Friday. We're going to have the homework due. If you can get that done, you'll be eligible for the prize on Friday. But what we also want to say is, even if you're watching this late, you're watching this over the weekend or something like that, you can still turn in your homework and you will be eligible for the final prize night, or that's going to happen on Monday. So make sure that you're still filling out forms and doing all that stuff, even if you're late for one of these days, because you still have a chance to win a prize on Monday. This session will be on light. It will be a fun time. And so that's basically it, you guys. I mean, that was all that I had to show, but I just wanted to make sure that we covered that. And of course, go here to acrylicuniversity.com/radiant. That's your place.
Yep.
That is the place,
man,
the one and only place.
There were so many other questions. And if you didn't get your question answered, ask it again on Friday. And I bet we'll get to you. We'll try our best.
And the other thing, yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can also email if you have something. A lot of these questions, if you go back through, I would also go back through and listen to other ones, because sometimes we've answered it before, so you might have just missed it. But we'll try.
Or in the Facebook group, that's a good place too. Oftentimes people jump in and help you out. Good point there, Christy.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at this. I applaud and thank you, Diana. I have definitely learned a few new techniques today.
Yay.
Thanks, Ray.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Diana. Yeah, so good. So you guys, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us for this session number 2. Thank you, Diana, for all of your effort and expertise and teaching so generously. Thank you, Peter, for holding down the fort behind the scenes.
Of course.
And everybody, thank you. It's so good. And I'm sorry for talking over you.
No worries. It gets a little awkward sometimes here, but
it does sometimes. But guys, thank you for being here. We love you. We believe in you. And adios until Friday. We'll see you then.
Bye. Everybody.